NVIDIA earnings are in, the stock is moving, and pretty much everyone has an opinion on what this means, but most of the commentary, I think, is missing the real story, which isn't actually about this quarter at all. It's about whether AI is in a supercycle that has legs for years, or whether we're about one overbuild away from a dot-com style wipeout. So today we're getting into the thesis that has Wall Street buzzing, which is, kind of answering the question, are we in a bubble or not? And if we're not, how much longer do we have? We have a lot of new data points now with this NVIDIA earnings report that I think are worth getting excited about. This is also the AI Weekly Roundup, where we talk about the top news of the week. So in addition to this, we have Perplexity. They launched a new personal computer from the ground up. Claude Cowork has become OpenClaw now. There's many OpenClaw alternatives that come from everywhere. And Anthropic wiped out, 15% of IBM's market cap in one single post. So
1 hour.
Lots of things are happening quickly, but maybe we'll start with the NVIDIA earnings report.
Yeah, so NVIDIA earnings pretty much broke the entire stock market, and I'll tell you why. For every single target, they beat it. They beat earnings per share. They brought in $68.1 billion in Q4, which is up about 70% from the year before and 20% from the previous quarter. And they're also estimating $78 billion for Q1 of this year, whereas the Wall Street estimates were about $72 billion. So things are looking pretty positive, right? And actually, in a post-closed market, the stock pumped 4%. But this morning, it's down 4%. It completely retraced the move entirely. So it added $150 billion to their market cap, and then it completely removed it. And I think that there's just a clear misunderstanding of what NVIDIA is doing here and why it's actually bullish. I think a lot of people look at this and say, this seems like an AI CapEx bubble. I don't know how much more sustainable it is. And to be honest, I'm going to spend a bit of time arguing as to why it actually is pretty amazing, because we're talking about a 75% year-upon-year growth. And I think that what the market misunderstands is there is a lot of investment in GPUs. Buying GPUs is very expensive. And at some point, the music has to stop, right? Except that the companies buying the GPUs are, number one, fully utilizing all their GPUs. So they're maxed out and they need to actually buy more. But number two, there's a story about a little thing known as electricity or energy, which needs to power these GPUs. And we just don't have enough of it.
Yeah, any way you look at this report, the numbers are pretty outrageous. Revenue of this quarter coming in at $80 billion estimate versus 72. The amount of money they're going to be earning and the profit margin that they have on those earnings is just absolutely gigantic. And I think one of the best takes that answered the question, are we in a bubble or not? Where are we in the bubble? What does this bubble look like? Is from this guy named Gavin Baker. I think everyone here, we love Gavin Baker. He's great. He's an analyst at Atreides Capital, I think. And right before the earnings report, he published this post, not knowing what the results were going to be, not knowing kind of how impressive it was going to be. And he kind of broke it down into a few sections. With the core question is NVIDIA's earnings durability, is it actually going to be able to hold through not only this report, but through future reports? And he outlines in this paper that every major tech revolution, like railroads, radio, the internet, it follows the same playbook generally, where the market correctly identifies the potential that creates a bubble, and then the excitement creates that bubble, and the demand temporarily collapses, and then there's a crash. And he has this line that I love that says, believing this time is different is dangerous, but I think this time might be different. Maybe you have some insight as to why he really believes this time is different, because it seems like this is backed up by real information that separates this bubble from those previous bubbles, like railroads, like the radio, like the internet even. This time actually is different for a few key reasons.
Yeah, so he makes the very valid point that in every previous bubble, we have overstepped what is actually real. So in this case, the people that are calling for the AI CapEx bubble, their argument would be that all the GPUs that are being bought aren't actually being utilized, and they're just kind of sitting and collecting dust. The truth is, all these GPUs, all these new ones, and 5 to 10-year-old GPUs are maxed out. In fact, if you wanted to go and rent a 5-year-old GPU from NVIDIA or from a secondary market right now, you'd be paying roughly 1.5 times the original cost of the GPU 5 years ago. The demand is off the scale, and it's not stopping anytime soon. But the second, more prescient point that he makes is the hyperscalers, even if they wanted to blow up a bubble that would lead to an ultimate collapse that all the doomers are talking about. They can't, because they're limited by the amount of electricity and power that our grid can currently support. So he's saying that we can buy all these GPUs and they could overbuy it, but they will have not enough power to power them up in the first place. So in a weird sort of way, the hyperscalers are restricted from creating the bubble that everyone is fearing and worrying about.
Yeah, in the dot-com bubble, there was this huge race to deploy fiber as fast as possible across the oceans, across the continents, to get everyone connected online. And the reality is that they were able to deploy the fiber so much faster than, we could come up with use cases for it. And in this case, the inverse is true, where everyone wants to move quickly. But he has this really elegant line that says, we're constrained by watts and wafers, meaning we don't have enough electricity, we don't have enough chips. And as a result, that becomes the limiting factor, enabling the growth. And it will stop us from actually accelerating as fast as we could and smoothing out what could eventually become a bubble, but still has a lot of narrative runway left. The summary of this is that so long as NVIDIA is printing cash and doing well, there is basically infinite demand because they are just not able to create as much as the industry desires. And as a result of watts and wafers being the limiting factor, we are just not able to reach bubble levels required to put things into the danger zone. So kind of his sentiment, and it seems like the sentiment after this NVIDIA report, is that there's a lot of time left before you have to worry about things collapsing. And there will be ruts along the way, but we are still green lights, full speed ahead.
A lot of people are worried about AI basically replacing human labor entirely. And he makes the point that because we're restrained by energy in the electrical grid, and we will be for the foreseeable future for the next at least 5 years until we build this thing, this stuff takes a lot of time, we'll reach a point where we buy enough GPUs, but the cost of paying an AI to do a human job actually becomes more expensive than just employing a human. As long as we have this limiting factor of electricity and power, humans are good for the foreseeable future. And of course, take that with a pinch of salt. It's interesting, this article was a direct rebuttal to a really tantalizingly written post from Citrini, which is a research firm, which basically outlined the doomer case, where AI takes over everything and humans basically need to kind of fight for themselves and subsidize themselves through, some kind of just voluntary payment structure. And so he's outlining the positive side of this here. Josh, I don't know if you saw, but there was also a piece that came out from Citadel Securities, which, by the way, is the most funniest thing ever, because Citadel is known for making most of their money from shorting stuff. So the fact that they're now super bullish this new technology is just kind of hilarious. They must have quite a few long positions open. But yeah, I think overall the point that's being made here is NVIDIA is beating its earnings. It's consistently done this for about 8 quarters now. Let me repeat that. Around 8 quarters. They're up 75% in gross revenue from last year. They've been repeating this for about 2 years now. This train isn't stopping, and I don't know how much longer the doomers can keep saying, hey, I think this is the top, this is the top, this is the end. I just don't think we're there yet.
What we see is the CapEx spend that we talked about a few weeks ago. Clearly, this is all going to places like NVIDIA. These companies have pledged $650 billion of CapEx spend, which is almost exclusively going to AI buildouts. NVIDIA is going to see a ton of that. These earnings are not going to slow down. The buildouts are not going to stop. It's just a very clear path to moving forward and to continuing this growth. And it's really exciting to be a part of this ride. Another ride that I went on yesterday was with Perplexity saying that they rebuilt the personal computer.
Josh, how much did that trigger you, that single sentence?
I'm just a little confused because, Perplexity, they've been quiet. We had Arvind, the CEO, as a guest on the show. Feel free to go back and find that interview. It was really interesting because they pivoted the entire company around building an agentic browser. And now it appears like they have expanded from the browser to the entire computer. So, Ijaz, I haven't looked into this news entirely. Yes. I'm not exactly sure what it is they built, but based on the announcement video, it seems like computer use is actually getting pretty good on Perplexity. Is that true?
Let's start with the good news. The vision with Perplexity Computer is, number one, they didn't rebuild an actual physical computer. What they rebuilt was the operating system for a computer. So right now, if you have Windows, you booted up Windows. If you have Mac OS, you have Mac OS. What they've tried to do here is build a layer on top of that unites all the things that you might potentially do on a computer, whether that's coding, whether that's doing your 9-to-5 job, whether it's opening up a browser, whether it's playing around with a few apps. they've unified it on a single layer called Perplexity Computer. Why did they do this? Well, their argument is very simple. They're saying, hey, you're using a different model for your browser. You're using a different model to code. You're using a different model to spin up agents to do your work for you. Let me just bring all of this under one roof and make a single unified experience. So I actually love the vision. And I think like something like this is actually desperately needed in a world where we have OpenClaw. And it's funny, we were just talking about like 10 different OpenClaw variants. We have Claude Cowork. I have 1 million subscriptions. My mind is going crazy. I just want one singular thing that I can like operate on. And this is what that thing supposedly does. It can research, design, code, deploy, and manage any project end to end. So that sounds good. But the question is, can it actually do it? So I want to go through like a few demos. One, which is showing, I think this might be the actual video, where it takes a long form video and creates a short form type of content. Do I have that right, Josh?
Oh yeah, it's halfway into this video. It's pretty well done because I've been trying to get this to work with a service like Claude, and it doesn't have the ability to edit videos within it. So I think that is a +1 to Perplexity, where the example that it uses, it's like go to an interview that Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, had, and then pull out a specific part and turn it into a clip. And then it actually went and it rendered the clip and it added subtitles and descriptions, and it did everything that a producer on a show like ours would do. So that was really interesting. And I think it's exciting to see these companies leaning more into this new AI first operating system, because as these AI models are getting better at computer use, and Anthropic just acquired another company that is exceptional at computer use, they're going to continue to kind of rebuild what the computer does, but through the AI first lens. And this seems pretty interesting. Like, as someone who hasn't used Perplexity in months, I'm reconsidering maybe I should sign up for a subscription and try this out.
Yeah, the way I would describe this is it is OpenClaw, but for normies, for the everyday person. You don't have to worry about massive security issues. It's a really simple and easy looking interface in terms of like connecting your apps. I think a portion of this data is held privately. The agents are very intuitive to use. You just kind of like prompt them. Like if you look at one of these demos right here, he says, I'm thinking about buying Walter White's house and turning it into a rental. Please build me a financial model. And it just kind of goes off and does its own thing. You don't need to tell it what tool to use. If it requires access to Slack or something, it'll say, hey, can I get access to Slack? You just say, yes, approved. And it just kind of like gets on with it. So I think that's pretty cool. There are also other few demos that I quite enjoyed. So if you're not in the finance world, or maybe you are, you would have heard of something called Bloomberg Terminal. It is like the mecca. It costs $30,000 a year to access, and you get all the latest, greatest financial news before the public gets it. If important financial news breaks, it breaks on Bloomberg Terminal first. It is the mecca. Someone rebuilt it from scratch using Perplexity Computer, and it took them less than an hour to do so. So you've already automated away $30,000 a year worth of value for the cost of a single prompt. And if I look at this interface right here from this demo, it actually looks super legit. Now, I don't know what IP infringements happen here. And like in defense of the non-Perplexity computer supporters, we actually kind of did something similar, Josh. I think what did we use to build this? We used, we did a test between Claude Code, Opus 4.6, and Codex 5.3. And we said, hey, can you build up an investment tracker analysis app for us? And I did it in a few minutes, but it wasn't to the extent that this thing is. So I think it's just that added layer of an operating system helps you kind of piece together a bunch of different tools and builds a better app or a better tool or a better web experience for versus like prior models.
It'll get you close. Like, what is this missing? Well, it's missing the real-time news. It's missing the private chat room. So it loses a lot of the value that comes from that $30,000 or however much it costs. But it created an interface that without those added values, it actually looks pretty much like a Bloomberg terminal. And all the data works, all of the news tracks, all of the charts are accurate. And it creates this fun dashboard with a single prompt. So Perplexity seems like they're onto something. I hope that they are aware that the rest of the industry is also working very hard to doing this. In fact, they might even be there already. And when I'm saying that, I'm referencing Claude Cowork, because essentially this week, they have turned Claude Cowork into OpenClaw one step at a time. And I think this started with news that was discussing scheduled tasks. So a big thing about OpenClaw in particular is that it has a heartbeat, and every 30 minutes it kind of wakes up and it goes through its tasks. And what Claude does now is you can schedule tasks to happen throughout the course of the day. You could ask it for a morning brief. You could ask it for weekly updates, for Friday presentations, whatever it may be. It adds these things called cron jobs into the Claude Cowork operating system. And I think it's another step of Claude and Anthropic and a lot of these companies kind of working towards this AI first operating system in a way that is very compelling. Like now I have it do a little morning roundup where in the morning it'll go through all the news that I missed over the night and just give me a couple bullet points to see if there's anything I find interesting. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's one very essential part of what makes OpenClaw an amazing product. And the fact that now you have like this kind of sandbox version where you don't need to kind of check for any security risks or anything like that is awesome. But that's not the only tool that they launched this week. Like Anthropic's been on a generational run this week alone.
It seems like every day they're announcing a new feature.
I need them to give me a break because it takes a while to process these things, but they're just shipping every single day at this point. I'm tired, dude. So this new feature is called remote control, which is exactly what it sounds like. You can now code using Claude from your phone whilst you're going on a walk, whilst you're walking on the dog. So if you need to get away from a screen, now, I'm sorry, you're chained. You're ball and chained even when you leave your house at this point. It's really cool because one of the great parts about OpenClaw was the fact that you could lay in bed or communicate with your coding agent or your Clawbot from anywhere in the world, and you didn't need to be at your desktop terminal at that specific time. Claude Code and Anthropic, prior to this announcement, required you to do so. Now you don't need to be able to do that. So now when you combine this with the autonomous cron jobs that you just mentioned, Josh, you start to see what the vision is going to be. And it looks something very similar to OpenClaw. But to go back to the original form of Anthropic announcements, they typically announce, 1 to 3 new plugins for Claude in general, Cowork specifically maybe, every week. And it results in I saw a stat here, it results in a 10 to 35% stock decline of any company that currently has the winning leading software, because now Claude has automated that entirely. And we have a new one this week.
That's crazy. Wait, we need to pause there for a second just to acknowledge how powerful Anthropic has become, where a single tweet and a single feature unlock has the ability to move markets billions, maybe tens of billions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And what I find funny and ironic, before we get into what happened this week with the news, is that it seems as if this is a power only Anthropic holds. If ChatGPT announced something similar to this, I'm not sure it has the impact of Anthropic and Claude. And I think that's worth acknowledging is because...
And they haven't. Yeah.
They haven't. Yeah, we haven't seen this. And I think it's worth acknowledging because Anthropic very clearly is seen as not only a powerhouse, but a real threat to a lot of institutions, a lot of companies that have been kind of grounded in their ways. And this example this week, I love. It's so funny. So please share with us what the hell happened with this new post that knocked a certain company off the grid.
Okay, so there are many different types of programming languages, and one very important and essential programming language for the business world, for data processing specifically, is known as COBOL, C-O-B-O-L. It stands for Common Business-Oriented Language. And one particular company called IBM has held the monopoly on this. And the reason why they've held the monopoly on this is that it's quite a complex programming language to understand. You need to kind of like learn how the different tools work, and then you need to adopt how the language actually fits to your business. It's a whole process. IBM walks you through hand in hand and figures it out for you. And they charge you a premium price to be able to do that. Until 2 days ago, when Anthropic announced that they had launched a single plugin that was coded from scratch using Claude Code, and it does all of that for you for the cost of a single prompt. The news wasn't too great. IBM stock, it says here, it dumped 10%. It actually dumped 15% within an hour of that tweet going live. Just insane to see. And this isn't the first time Anthropic has done this. They announced a legal plugin about a week and a half ago, and all law stocks dumped about $30 billion. Just insane.
That's a huge amount of money that's blown. And I think it's a testament to kind of where things are going, right? It's IBM makes so much money because COBOL is such a old, outdated protocol that no one really supports, no one really understands how it works. They're maintaining dinosaur code. And now Anthropic comes in and says, we're not like humans. We don't get tired. We don't get bored. We will actually just go and work with your COBOL code and fix things. And that knocked 15%. That's a huge amount of money. And that's still not the extent of all the Anthropic news this week, because there is another security implementation. So if I remember correctly, when they announced Opus, maybe it's 4.6, they announced it with the fact that it found 500 zero-day vulnerabilities in code.
Correct.
Meaning that there is existing code bases out there that have exploits. It uncovered 500 of them just via the AI model itself. And now what they're doing, it seems, is they're kind of reversing that and allowing you to have the tools to play defense against Claude's own hacking abilities. Is that right?
Yeah, I actually think that it might have been Codex 5.3 from OpenAI, but the fact is, like, both models can do the same thing. And these coding models are getting so good at finding the vulnerabilities that humans are very prone to implementing in their own code. And these vulnerabilities, by the way, can be exploited for billions of dollars. I'm not like underselling this. Like, if you are a multi-billion-dollar company, $100 billion plus, right? And you have a security flaw that gives people access to personal data or bank account information, that could be a really large financial and legal risk for you. So it's very important that you patch these things up. But the issue is humans, well, number one, need to be an expert in that specific code base in order to find those specific flaws. So there's only usually about 3 to 5 people in any of these big companies that can do that. So there's a heavy risk point there where if those people leave the company or they decide to like go focus on something else, you now have an open risk. Claude announced this new tool called Claude Code Security, which now does this for you. It scans your entire code repository in about 10 to 30 minutes. It understands the nuance and the way that you wrote this code, the context with your business, et cetera, and then it finds all the security flaws for you. Typically, this would have taken a team of 5 to 10 people months, or it's like a recurring thing. And now you could just run a single prompt like every 30 minutes or every week, and it'll discover all the flaws for you. But it gets even better. It proposes the solution that you need to fix in order to resolve that security issue. It doesn't go to the extent where it writes up the fix for you, although you can definitely say like, hey, okay, that sounds good. Build the fix for me, because they wanted to maintain the human in the loop. But if you can imagine, if the AI is already good enough to find the flaws and create the fix for the flaws, you might just let this thing run autonomously for you. Now, let me ask you this. How much is that product worth for your business? It's probably like tens of billions of dollars, if not more.
They're just continuing to snipe and cherry pick the value from every existing company until it's all in one. It's amazing the amount that they're absorbing in the market. We have a few things left to cover this week that I kind of want to go through quickly. The first one being the XAI Pentagon deal. XAI and Grok is now powering Pentagon's AI technology. And this is like a strange narrative timeline that we're running in. We had an episode earlier this week that I would recommend checking out about Anthropic and their kind of difficulties they've been having in dealing with the government, because they seemingly don't want to give access to all of the ways in which the Pentagon wants to use it. But it appears as if Grok and XAI did not have this problem. And the plan is that they're going to fully integrate Grok starting later this month into military operations. What those are, I don't know. I'm not sure we'll ever find out. But I just find it interesting that there is a new kind of role in government here for AI labs, and Grok is now going to be one of the front runners here. This comes on the back of, more drama with Anthropic, right? It was after we recorded the episode, there was still even more. Apparently, Anthropic has an ultimatum where by Friday, they have to either decide if they're going to comply with the Pentagon's request or not. And if they don't, what's at stake here for Anthropic?
So there's this thing I'm highlighting here called the Defense Production Act. The Pentagon basically has 2 options if Anthropic refuses on Friday. They can force their hand, initiating the Defense Production Act to basically say, sorry, you legally now need to give me an uncensored version, even though you declined, because it is now the official law and it's a case of national state security, which, by the way, is an insane thing. Or they can take option 2, which is blacklist Anthropic and all of their models as a security risk to the nation, which means that Anthropic probably ceases to receive any kind of government funding or regulatory support in the future. And it also pushes up all the other models that have signed partnerships with the Pentagon, such as Grok. And I hear OpenAI and Google is doing the same as well. The sentiment has been split on this, Josh. I've seen both sides. One saying Anthropic just needs to wisen up. And I think that was a lot of the argument that we gave on our episode earlier this week. Again, please go check it out. Let us know if you think we're wrong. But then the other side, like I saw Jeff Dean tweet this morning. And Jeff Dean is like the guy from Google. He built so many of Google's key products. And he said, I like that Anthropic's taking a stand, and it's important that they don't violate, I think it's the First Amendment or whatever it is, where you can't surveil all Americans. And I respect it. So, the fourth.
Yeah,
so,
it's seems heavy-handed, right? Like I could understand not working with them, but putting them on a blacklist seems a bit extortive, especially when there's other options.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Like the government's favorite model, and Pete said this himself, the head of the Pentagon, he said that Claude is the best model, and they've been using it for over a year now. So you can imagine if Claude has been trained with all your employees, it's been entrenched on your data, you kind of don't want to rip that out and then like train a new model from scratch. So Anthropic has everything to win and lose here.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm sure we're missing a lot of context too, due to just the general private nature of how these deals work.
Yes.
So it's going to be tough to really give an honest opinion because I'm sure we're missing a lot of data, but interesting nonetheless. And congrats to XAI and the team for getting a new contract. Last winner of the week, AMD. Oh my God, 15% jump in one day on a Meta deal. Meta is now working with AMD. I thought Meta was working with NVIDIA.
That's what I thought. But no, they signed a new $6 billion compute partnership. And remember, it's not a deal now. It's just, we're specifically calling it partnerships because, of course,
these are so crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. The circular economy is back. The nature of the deal is basically Meta doesn't want to rely solely on NVIDIA chips, although NVIDIA is the big boy here. So they want to diversify their compute arsenal so that if anything were to happen to NVIDIA or any of the other chip makers, they can still stay alive and feed their product to you. Now, Meta has been out of the kind of news for a while because their models weren't able to keep up, and they spent about, what was it, like $100 to maybe $200 billion to hire like something ridiculous, like 50 people in their new AI team, and they have had nothing to show for it. Rumor says they're meant to be releasing a new model in a few weeks' time. Avocado is the code name. And so if that is all it's hyped up to be, then they're going to need all the data center compute that they can. And they seem to be sure that AMD will be the ones to be one of the main providers for them. So they've locked in that deal. They're building out data centers. And yeah, AMD stock jumped 15%. Absolutely insane.
Well, happy for all parties involved. I think one thing throughout the episode, there's a central theme in which there is no amount that can satiate the demand for AI compute and energy and electricity. And like, I'm sure Meta would prefer to work with NVIDIA, but this is the option that they have because they need GPUs, they need compute, they need energy, and they have no choice. So we are going to continue this run, this generational run that we've had really in the world of AI. It doesn't seem like the top is in. It doesn't seem like the top is anywhere near. And that leaves me optimistic and wanting to continue to deploy capital into this ever-changing, absolutely outrageous market. But that is another week of the AI Roundup. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I hope you enjoyed all the episodes this week. If you missed any, they're pretty short, normally 20 to 25 minutes. We talked about Google had some pretty amazing tools where now we can create songs and jingles for the podcast. We talked about Anthropic at length, and now we have this kind of roundup that is covering just about anything that you would need. If you don't feel satiated, we have a second form of content, which is the newsletter. Every Wednesday, release a think piece. This week was about a new company that I'm very excited about. A startup that I guarantee 95 plus, maybe 99% of the people listening have not heard of. So if you're interested in that, or if you're interested in the second roundup, which is released every Friday, Ijaz is tackling that one. And I would highly advise subscribing. The links are all in the description down below. Ijaz, any final notes before we part for the weekend?
Nope. Wherever you listen or watch us, please like, subscribe, give us a rating. It helps us out so much. And we will see you on the next one.
Bubble goes on forever. Quarterly earnings just won't quit. You better cut a deal with the government. Building a whole new internet.